Welcome to another session of the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Mr. Shawn Dove, and we're going to get into this conversation today um, about what we can do to increase our impact, especially as Black men. But if you're here with us, please share this conversation with your connection. I know you will gain a lot from this conversation. I'm also looking forward to this conversation. But before we get into the conversation itself, Mr. Dove is the managing partner for New Profit, and he's the CEO and founder of CBMA, Corporation for Black Male Achievement. And I can go on with a list of achievements that Mr. Dove have received, but it may take up the time we have this morning. But he has been an advocate, especially for Black males, and want to see Black males do extremely well. I will also say, he has been one of the individuals that I look up to when I just started this journey. So, but before we get into what we're going to be talking about today, I will ask Mr. Dove, Shawn, to share with us more about himself before we start the conversation. Mr. Dove.
Great to be here, brother Dr. Richard. Just want to, before I even share about myself, I just want to just commend you, your leadership and your light. The last time we were having a conversation, we were talking about the importance of being masters of our own media and sharing our stories and taking control of our narrative. And I don't know, especially around Black men and boys, you are like on the Mount Rushmore as far as I'm concerned with who is really leading in this area right now, right? And so I would say like the most important line in my bio is that I'm married to my divine mate, Desiree. I am the dad of Nia, Maya, Cameron, and Caleb, right? And actually, let me correct that, like Noah, Maya, Cameron, and Caleb, because Nia has gone through some changes in her identity, and last year said uh, she's no longer Nia, she's Noah, right? And so that's part of
Okay.
like, leadership and growth, right? Just turned 62 last September, and I'm continuing to evolve and grow. But father, husband, child of God, I would say are the most important things that folks need to know about me. Um, Native New Yorker, lived in every borough except for Staten Island. My mom immigrated to the States from Jamaica when she was 18, had me at 22, and just has been a model for me, my single mom, of this resiliency, generosity, um, love, right, and community building. And I'll just close with that. Over the last 4 decades, my leadership journey has intersected community building, education, um, arts education, media literacy, philanthropy, certainly racial and social justice. And at the heart of my work has really been about creating stories for and by Black men and boys, like story of loving, learning, and leading. And my core mission mantra, Richard, is that there's no Calvary coming to save the day in our communities, right? That
Right.
we are the iconic leaders that we have been waiting for, curators of the change we're seeking to see. And when I think about us being curators of the change we're seeking to see, it reminds me that, we have everything we need, right?
Right.
And that our challenge as Black men, as leaders, as a community, in so many ways, is how do we get information and curate all that we have, which requires a level of trust, a level of solidarity, and a level of collaboration that in this moment that we're having this conversation, we are experiencing as a people a heightened focus attacked on our blackness, our personhood, and who we are. So, you know, transformational times require transformational leadership, and I believe we were born for such a time as this.
I agree. And every time I do think about the work, I do look at it as you just stated that, we're here this time because of the work that we're supposed to do, and we're equipped. And sometimes we, may feel as if we are not equipped to do the work that we feel compelled to do. But if we are here now, we are equipped to do the work. And as you mentioned, no Calvary is coming to save us. So we have to do our due diligence in the spaces that we are in, to move the needle forward. And I will just say, as you stated, that this journey going forward will definitely take trust, solidarity, and collaboration between us, especially as Black men, because I do strongly believe, we have the innate ability. We are resourceful, we are creative, and we can make this thing work. We just have to come together, because that's how we're going to do the best work. It's not just individually.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say, brother, that perhaps the best work that we all should be doing is working just as hard on ourselves as we are in the movement or
Yeah,
the cause. Uh, I've been blessed with a community of mentors that have poured into me over my life journey, and one of them is Jeff Canada, founder of the Harlem Children's Zone. And one of the things he said to me and said to others, like that if you're going to do anything significant, right, that you have got to be in the best spiritual and physical shape that you can be in, right? And that's not like a state of perfection, but it is a definitely a state of progression, right? And so as leaders, it's real easy to be called to look out the window, cast a vision, and focus on where we have to go and
correct.
where we want to go, looking out the window. um Not so much looking in the mirror, right, and the work that we need to do uh as leaders to become whole, well, self-aware black men, right? And another brother in my network, Dr. Shawn, who I encourage you to get on the show, the author of the Four Pivots and the co-founder of Flourish Agenda. Dr. Jenright says that the uh, greatest act of resistance in social justice is self-care, right? And so I just want to like lead with that, particularly, especially in these crucial times we are in,
Yes,
uh, living and navigating in a time where there is a heightened focus attacked on our blackness, our personhood, in the country that we were brought to and helped to build. It's going to be like real important, like focus and understanding we can't be all places at all times. Like, so I just want to lift that up to the brothers and sisters that may be tuning in, that this is a moment to like um, maybe even pause and figure out what is God calling you to do in this season.
Yeah.
and to be mindful that we are dealing with weapons of like mass distraction,
Yep.
and what is the focus and being called to in this season. We were just talking about this in the green room in your
Yeah.
journey, right? And
Yes.
being still
Correct.
and
Yes. Sometimes we have to just, step back and look, and to make sure the decisions that we're making, they are in alignment, with the purpose, with the vision, what we feel compelled to do. Because sometimes, we just may want to move or just to do some things, and maybe that which we want to do may not be the best decision. So sometimes, as you mentioned, we have to step back and do some thinking and trust the process, because it's easy, to just jump and do, but sometimes we have to really think about it, and let God guide us through, the process of what we should be doing and where we should go, because sometimes that's the best thing to do,
whew,
to make the impact that we are supposed to make, because it's, as you mentioned, there are so many distractions out there, and we can be pulled in areas that we may not need to be in. So, we have to be mindful.
yeah, and many delicious and delightful distractions, right?
Correct.
And a gifted brother like yourself, multi-talented, there are so many places in areas where you could be leaning in, sowing seeds. I came across this quote from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, who said that you are really focused when you are mourning the things that you have said no to, right?
Mm.
And that level of like discernment, and that's like one of my Achilles heels, right? Of wanting to be here, there, everywhere, saying yes to things I should be saying no. And I've been practicing more intently with more discernment in this season, Richard, saying no. And it's
Correct.
hard because I got this like I want to be needed, right? I got a brother in my life, Greg Corbin, a few years ago, who said to me, "You got to get comfortable with disappointing folks and saying no." So I just really want to lift up um, that having the courage and focus to say no in this moment and season. And I am at 62 embracing my emerging elder season, right? Brother Ron Walker, Baba Ron Walker, the founder of COSBOC, the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, who is a model for me. He's 78 years old. We don't believe in retirement. We believe in refirement, and he's demonstrating what that is in his elderhood. He calls me Baba in training, and we talk about just how we are using our time,
Correct.
just really judiciously in this moment, right? And so, I would call all the leaders um, and individuals and brothers, especially. Um, what are you doing, and how are you using your time? Because that is like the most valuable resource that we have. Um, I am on this call on this Saturday, February 15th, holding some grief. One of my mentors, the co-founder of the Beloved Community Center in Greensboro, North Carolina, Reverend Nelson Johnson, last Sunday passed away. Right,
My condolences.
and we don't know how much time. And he lived a fruitful life, poured out. On one hand, he was like 81 years old and has left an incredible legacy. May we all be so lucky to do so. then, in the same token, my executive assistant, her brother this week went into the hospital on Tuesday
Wow.
and with the flu, and in 2 days saw his lungs collapse, his kidneys fail, go into cardiac arrest, and Thursday he was gone.
Wow.
So we don't know. Like, let's make the most of our missed. And one of the practices for me, I had a leadership coach a decade ago, took me through an assignment of writing my own eulogy, right? And why wait to have someone else do that? So a practice envisioning and beginning with the end in mind is write your own eulogy so that you're living into the life, the future, and as Didier Sylvain, another brother and coach and leader in my life, he always asks the question of like, what do you want to be known for? And so I encourage all of us in our journaling practice, right? If you don't have one, start one to focus on that. Write your eulogy. What do you want to be known for? What's the legacy we are living and choosing to live into?
And as you talk about, and thanks for that reminder about, creating, as you said, the eulogy, but writing that blueprint and live into it. But as you mentioned, as you're talking about, those individuals that are close to you that recently passed away or passed on, about is taking care of ourselves and using our time wisely. And on this journey, it's important, that we take care of ourselves. Self-care is critical, as we go on this journey. And it doesn't matter if you're taking care of yourself anyway, because, we still don't know the time, but it's important that we take care of ourselves. But as you're talking about us, and leading and the impact that we want to make, I want to ask you this question, because as Black men, I think the leadership and how we live our lives is important. So, what does authentic leadership look like for Black men, and how can we embrace it in our daily lives?
Yeah, wow, that is a the question, right? And it's funny that yeah, I have on my authentic
Authentic,
sweatshirt, right? And I would start, Richard, with knowing who you are, knowing whose you are. And authentic leadership is embracing that there is a calling on your life that is bigger than who you are, right? We've heard the adage of know thyself, right?
yeah,
And so I think it certainly would start there, right? Know who you are, remember who you are. And there is like so much in life and society that distracts us, a cultural warfare that distracts us from that. So I would say authentic leadership, and that is less of a declaration and more of an ongoing work that you do, knowing who you are. Um, I think authentic leadership requires courage, right?
courage,
Um, and I like to say I have a degree from UCLA, and that's the university on the corner of Lenox Avenue in Harlem. And one of the courses uh, in this life skills environment was the dice game, craps, and remembering a saying there like scared money don't win. And being able to, and you see Muhammad Ali behind me. And one of his quotes that I cling to, Muhammad Ali says, "He he who is not courageous enough to take risk
Yeah.
will accomplish nothing in life. So I think authentic leadership entails courage. I think it also entails having a vision that is a bigger than you, like a scary a vision, right? Throughout this conversation, I'm just going to be channeling and pouring in so many people that have been mentors and folks that have poured into me. But Sister Terry Williams, um, she said to me and a group of young people years ago, um, that if you're not leaving your house most days with butterflies in your stomach, with what God has called you to do, that you are living a pathetic life, right? You are not living up. So that requires like calling, right?
Yeah.
And acting like in that sense of courage, right? And then I'll also say a few other things when you ask about what does authentic leadership um, look like, what does it uh, require, collaboration,
Yeah.
and being able to work with others. And oftentimes, um, sometimes not like-minded, but like-hearted
Correct.
individuals that you
Yeah.
may not certainly agree with all the time, um, but the Lone Ranger, the solo maverick. No, it's going to take collaboration. It's going to take um, working with others, and
Correct.
that requires a level of humility
Correct. Yeah.
and service. And you can't be showing up as my way or the highway. Um, Authentic leadership is nimble leadership, an understanding that shift happens, right? And being able to have a level of persistence, perseverance,
Yeah.
that you will get knocked down, right? If I can say this on your, you can edit it out, but you're gonna get your ass kicked. You're
Oh
gonna take
yes.
some, you're gonna take some lumps in your leadership in your life journey, in your ability to bounce back, right? And your ability as a leader to embrace is not how far you fall, it's how high you bounce. I think I shared with you in a previous conversation, right? If someone would have said to me 35 years ago that Shawn, if you Google your name, uh, it would be synonymous with black male achievement.
Yeah.
I would have said 35 years ago, what the hell is Google?
Yeah.
And shut up and pass the joint, right? And I bring that up because we all have resistance, um, struggles, and stuff to overcome. 35 years ago, I was contemplating suicide
Wow.
because I was caught up in the grips of my drug and alcohol addiction. And I thought that the only way out was ending my life.
Wow.
But God intervened and said, I have something greater for you. But I had to have the courage to ask for help.
Correct.
And I think that that's another leadership principle, authenticity and understanding. I don't have all the answers, and our ability, particularly as as men,
Yeah.
our ability to like say, I don't have all the answers, and I need your help, right? I got something inside of me, uh, and I need your help to pull it out. And
Correct.
how do we serve as black men, literally as midwives to each other, right? That we all got something inside of us that we want to birth and
Yeah.
believe to come to fruition in our leadership and life journeys. And our ability to get humble and go to someone and say, I got something inside of me that I was trying to push out on my own. I
Yeah.
can't, I need your help. So those are all things. And I think there's so much more in authentic leadership, but those are some things, brother. And I'll close with one other thing, just like this issue of and practice and value of trust and credibility and character, right? And that goes to what I said earlier, right? Working harder on ourselves than we are working on what's on the outside, and the choices that we have to face, definite, every day, that are character and credibility and trust, and how are we trusting ourselves
Yeah.
in um, this journey in life, that there is so much that is calling us to make like bad decisions, temptations.
And just to highlight a few points that you shared, uh, you know, as you mentioned, when it comes to authentic leadership, about having the courage, and it almost encompasses everything that you said, because to persist or to be dedicated, to show up as the person you are, it takes courage. Because on this journey, everyone may not like how we show up or how the things that we do, and it does take courage. Even to be humble takes courage. Even to ask for support takes courage.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we do lack the courage, because if we don't have the courage, we're not going to ask for help. And a lot of people think that asking for help or support on the journey is weakness, because that's what we have been taught, especially as Black men. So it's like developing this courage to say, you know what, man, I need to get over here, but I don't know how to. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think, for us to go forward and to do the work that we are called to do, as you mentioned, man, we can't do it by ourselves. We need the support of others. So those who are here and those who are listening, as we have been reminded that this journey do take courage, but also take the support of others, and we have to have that willingness to ask for support as we go, because we're leaders and we may not have all the answers. We don't have all the. No one um, have all the answers.
Yeah, man. And so, and like, and from where are you getting your courage? Like for me, I'm like, God is the ultimate source of courage, and like, Lord, I can't do this on my own, right?
Correct.
I need you to intervene and give me the strength and courage that I often don't feel I have, right? And two things, you could be brave and afraid at the same time if you are pulling and leaning on not your own courage, but God's courage. And how do, as leaders, we get more courage? I would say we need to like be hanging out with courageous people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I think courage is contagious. And
Yeah.
I remember like growing up, and there was some static and some beef, and depending on who was on the block that day,
Oh yeah.
for me, dictated how courageous, how, if Big Mike and Squeaky, older guys, they were down. I was like, okay, I'm like, I'm down for some beef. I'm down for some static. But if they weren't on the block that day, I'm like, I don't know if this is a good day, um, for and the courage, and it's a muscle.
Yeah.
It's a muscle. Keep practicing, moving forward, even in the face of your fear.
Oh
That
yeah.
builds.
Yeah, that is important. We can't allow fear to stop us. But as you mentioned, that when you are around people who are willing to move forward despite what's happening, man, you feel courageous too. As you said, when certain guys are on the block, you're going to step forward and do, or whoever want to challenge you, you're going to challenge them. And the same thing, if we are around people who are cowards, or who conform to what's going on, we may not step forward. Having those people who are courageous around us as leaders, it's important. Leaders, yes, we need to lead the way, but if the people around us are timid, or are not willing to challenge the status quo, sometimes we start to adapt to their perspective, their belief. So having courageous people around us is important, especially as we lead forward on this journey, to tackle some of the challenges that we may encounter on the journey. And it's not just the adversities. Sometimes, courage is just to be the willingness to take that risk that, sometimes do take a little bit more than your own effort. So having those people around you. But I want to shift gear a little bit, from leadership, because I know you have been, working in the space of empowering Black males, for a long time. And so I want to ask you a question on social impact, because that's what your work really consists of, making that impact within our community. So my question, to you is, what areas in our communities require the most attention for creating lasting social impact?
Hmm. It's an amazing question, right? And I think where we need to start with answering that question, brother, is that we need to be clear that we are in a society and system that has been born and built with seeing Black people as inferior, as subhuman. And so being clear that we are in a fight, anti Blackness and white supremacy, right? And structural racism requires a structural strategic response, right? So there is not one area um, in isolation, right? So I just want to like start there, and I think of the various areas of capital that we have and that we can build when we talk about social impact. And I would start with our cultural capital, right? The CEO of the organization, the venture philanthropy firm that I work at, is called New Profit. And the CEO, Tulane Montgomery, she often says that we have to be students of history and futurists at the same time. And so when I lift up our cultural capital, we have a long history and lineage to draw from. And right now, we are seeing uh, aggressive measures to erase our cultural capital and our history out of the history book. So we cannot rely on just um, public institutions, right? So we need to lift that up and build that in our places of worship, our community centers, and places where we gather, where we can lift up and build. And there's a brother, another recommendation for your show, Chris Chapman, the founder of Kingmakers of Oakland, who talks about the importance of AI. And that AI is not artificial intelligence, that's ancestral intelligence, right? So
Hmm.
cultural capital is one. I would say, how are we building our financial capital and economic mobility in the way of, you know, not only building wages, but building wealth as a community through entrepreneurship, through policies that infuse capital in our uh, community, our institutions, our organizations. So there's cultural capital, there's financial capital, there is certainly intellectual capital, right? I think that what we are doing now, what you do in your platform of Black Male Impact, right, builds intellectual capital and uh, amplifying stories and examples and role models and leaders that are moving the Black male achievement um, movement, social capital. We are
You know,
relational people, right? We sometimes we may not have the financial capital we need, but we know people, our relationships, our networking, and then I will close with spiritual capital and probably starting uh, are there, right? So those are, I think, when we talk about like social impact, I would not, and I do not divorce social impact as Black people from our spiritual capital, and that means different things for a different people. But I believe that we cannot have, as leaders, as community, impact without a spiritually rooted, faith based grounding and centering.
oh yeah, that's important. Because we need that spiritual aspect of our lives, so we can stay grounded. But as you were talking about, how and where we may need to focus, and as you mentioned that, we have challenges today, and with our history and how our history is sometimes seems to um, be challenged. But as you mentioned and remind us that, we need to take charge of sharing what we know about our history. Don't wait on someone else to take the lead on our history. It's our responsibility to make sure we are passing that history on to the next generation, because it empowers them. And that goes back to what you said about, and which you talk about, the brother that is doing the AI, ancestral intelligence. I really love that, because a lot of us haven't been exposed to some of the things that us have done. That is something that I've been paying attention to lately on my journey. So being in spaces that talks about what Black men and women have accomplished, will really empowers us, especially with, if we're talking about making or having this social impact. We need to stand on those, before our shoulders, so we can see that, look, if you have adversity, I had it, those people before us had it, but they overcome it. So
Yep.
knowing what they have done, and maybe with less than we have today, I think it will give us that strength, to go forward.
And there are tons of examples, brother, of impact that you amplify around the country, right? I mentioned Kingmakers of Oakland and the work that Chris Chapman is doing. There's another brother I want to lift up, Dr. David Miller, who is leading, um, not alone, with others, an African centered rites of passage strategy in Baltimore, right? And that is a example. And the approach is not only working with boys, young men, taking them to a rites of passage, which our cultural capital is built upon, but the the men, the adult men, go through a rites of passage of their own, because the healing that we need to um, help and build, right? In our community. Um, Too often we jump into leadership spaces, environments, organizations without having dealt with the trauma, um, the sense of brokenness and woundedness that we have as leaders, right? And how are we working on ourselves? So that is an example. The Baltimore Rites of Passage program, and like, how do we invest and scale up those strategies? Because we're in a fight, man. We are in a fight for the future of our families, our communities, and this is like, a 4 centuries fight, but we are in a space now, and I say transformational times require transformational leadership, where in this nation, uh, the forces against um, us are emboldened,
For sure.
empowered. And so the call for leadership, the call for community, the call for healing and solidarity could not be as important as it is now. And so many of our elders are like, we talk about this work of black male achievement. What I have noticed, this is the long game,
Yeah.
because I have witnessed this cadence and cycle of like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, right? Whenever we progress as a people, there is always backlash. History has shown that. And we have to find ways that we ensure that the backlash does not sink us into despair,
Correct. Yeah.
right? And sense of hopelessness. And sometimes that may require a pause. That may require. I just took a semi sabbatical and took some time alone in the mountains. That we are taking steps to do what we need to do to. But this is like certainly generational work,
Correct.
and reconciling. Derek Bell, who was one of the creators of the critical philosophy and practice. He and Kimberly Crenshaw and Faces at the Bottom of the Well writes about the permanence of racism and the philosophy that, because of the society and culture of America, racism is not going anywhere. And once you reconcile that, that shifts how you approach and um, counterattack and fight the forces, right?
Correct.
And I remember, God, it was about a decade ago, and I shared earlier about grieving the loss of Reverend Nelson Johnson, the co-founder of Beloved Community Center. And I remember spending about 5 days down in Greensboro with he and his wife, Joyce Johnson, and some others at the Beloved Community Center during a retreat. And coming back, I was leading the campaign for Black Male Achievement at that time. And coming back from that retreat to my home in New Jersey, revitalized for the fight and believing, racism is going to end in my lifetime, and I'm going to have my unique contribution uh, to this movement and to ending it. And in that week that I returned, um, on video, on TV, I saw the murder of Alton Sterling by police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Then a couple days after that, on Facebook Live, the nation saw the murder of Philando Castile outside of Minneapolis by a white police officer, and he had a permit to carry his arm, right, his firearm, and those back-to-back murders of black men on the heels of like my revitalizing retreat was like a collision to my consciousness and me like racism isn't ending in your lifetime, Sean. Given that, what are you going to do while you are here? We were talking earlier about make the most of your miss. You don't know how long. We don't know how long we are going to be here. And so much of that is pouring into the next generation of leaders, creating spaces where racial and social justice and social impact leaders have opportunities to connect and to build and opportunities to invest in their work. So much of this is less about passing the baton, but how do we share the baton and intergenerational leadership and devoting my life to telling stories, writing and publishing and inspiring other leaders, right? And that's why I'm just like this really crazy about the work that you are doing
For
about
sure.
amplifying storytelling and especially black leaders in our narrative, right? I believe that our story is our strength. Our
Correct.
stories are our strength, and our wisdom is our wealth. And how do we pass that on? And I'm like, in your lifetime, Sean, how are you able to focus and do that for the next generation? Um, and that's just really amplifying for me in this current moment that we are in, in not only just our country, globally.
And just to go over some of the things that I think worth repeating, especially when it comes to social impact and us as Black men and some of the things that we're dealing with. You touch on healing, especially as leaders, because if we don't work and heal ourselves, we spill the wrong thing on people. So it's important that we, really have that self-reflection, look at ourselves and make sure we are not carry on some of the things that are detrimental to our progress. We know what's happening outside of us that, we may not be able to control, how people treat us, but we must make sure that which we have been conditioned to think about ourselves and our own brothers and sisters, we don't do those things, because if we're going to go forward stronger, we have to make sure we are uplifting and not bringing down each other. And I think that will be is a part of healing. We have to heal so we can develop the trust with each other, so we can collaborate with each other, so we can move in solidarity with each other. As you have mentioned, because the change is not going to happen by others for us. We have to. And a part of, that work, as you mentioned, it will require us going through a period of healing. And as you talk about, you're taking the time off to make sure, you can go forward stronger. But also, as you mentioned, with those experiences, because when we dedicate ourselves to do the work, and then we see things happening that counter, the progress that we want to make, we can get discouraged.
Yeah,
But your example, and what you have done since those times, when once you see what's happening, you still put your best foot forward and do the work. So we cannot allow what's happening around us to discourage us. And I want to ask another question on social impact. before we end today, um, which you kind of mentioned about collaborating. So, what role does economic empowerment play in driving meaningful social change? And when you were talking about the different capital, social capital, and financial capital, it resonate because it's important. So, what role does economic empowerment play in driving meaningful social change?
It's plays a critical role, right? Um, an essential role because poverty and the lack of economic mobility is no accident. It's by design, right?
Yeah,
That um, the systems and structures are just established that there is a scarcity and lack of first a consciousness of economic mobility and empowerment, right? And believing uh, and having this like wealth building consciousness, right? And then secondly, the opportunity to build. We know that businesses, entrepreneurship, the ability to, especially as a black man, right? We're in the midst of uh Black History Month, right? And
correct.
you think of the sign, the iconic sign of Dr. King organizing transit workers in Memphis, Tennessee, shortly before his assassination. The sign that black men were wearing was like, I am a man, right? And the ability to provide for your family, the ability for economic justice and fair wages um, is paramount, right? So, to answer your question, it's at the heart. And one of the things that we are like facing in this current climate and the coming generation, and seeing that for our, talking about progression, right? With each, we prided ourselves as a people that the next generation did better, that our children economically did better because of the fight, the sacrifices um, that we did in our generation. But we are facing the reality for the first time in our history in this country that our children are not doing better. Our children economically are those that go to graduating with steep, student loan debt,
Yeah,
the opportunities economically in the labor force. We are seeing a retrenchment. And so, generational wealth and our ability to um, leave a financial inheritance for our families and our communities is essential. And what we are seeing now is you don't have, if you're at the margins economically, and then you're like hit with community layoffs, if you're already at the margins and are seeing attacks, it just pushes you further, right? And so many are living from payday to payday. And so our ability, and I think that economic empowerment and economic impact calls for what I was talking about earlier, our ability to collaborate and trust each other and work together. Um, is critical, right? You could just do a whole series when we're talking
Um,
about black male empowerment and impact on the economics of it, brother.
I think I do look at it, and sometimes I do wonder if the generation before did got complacent, just accepting and are not just complacent, but become maybe a little bit more selfish and thinking that everything was okay because now I have access. So I'm not going to put the same effort in because the generation before you may have say, you know what, we have to put in all these steps to make sure those who are coming after us um, have more. But I think once that generation may got to a point where things seems to be accessible, maybe a little bit of complacency took place, which makes it a little bit harder for current and future generation, because we have to kind of have the same aggressive mindset to make sure we are securing not just for ourselves but for the future. But I think somewhere in the line there's a generation that became like complacent and say, I'm going to secure for me. And I think that's where we may have dropped the ball in regards to economic empowerment.
Yeah, brother. The opiate and illusion that comes with affluence
Yeah,
and the it's like that the American dream is rooted in individualism, right? And not this generational building for our community, and then the separation of our community by class,
yeah,
and moving out of the hood, right? And what does it mean, and how are we building connections? And like, we're not, none of us are free until we're all free, right? And so we all fall susceptible and guilty to the lure of economic freedom that cuts us off from our broader community. Like we've made it, right? George Jefferson, moving on up, right? And oh God, there is so much when you look at economic empowerment and over the generations, right? And so many of us, if we knew better, we would have done better, right? But we are facing in our community, wow, we didn't see this coming, or what more could we have done around financial empowerment and building? And there's what we could have done, but also not ignoring the reality of the structural systemic forces against us, right?
yeah,
Something like the GI Bill, right?
oh, yeah,
Where white servicemen after World War II came home, and the GI Bill was able to provide from the federal government white servicemen resources to buy homes
correct.
and to build their generational wealth. That was excluded. People, black service people were excluded from the GI Bill, right? And so systemically, the redlining. And so there's no such thing as like pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you ain't got no boots, right? So I think it's really
Correct.
important to not ignore the systemic and policy agenda that has over generations ensured that our economic mobility um, is hindered and existent. That GI Bill is just one example of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As you mentioned that, we had so many oppositions to deal with in society, and that makes it harder. because Black people have been working hard. We have been putting in the work, but yet we are not afforded the same access, the same opportunity to build the wealth or to change the dynamics of our existence. It makes it a little bit harder because, as you mentioned, the GI Bill, those soldiers didn't get the same opportunity. You know, so I think have to deal with these different oppositions really prevent us from growing economy, growing our financial base, our wealth, and sometimes we think, because I've read it, where having education, was supposed to, but even with education, sometimes as Black people, we don't get the same opportunity. We as they say, we have to work twice as hard, but sometimes we do that, but we don't afford the same opportunity to provide that economic empowerment. Because if you don't have the jobs or the careers, even though you have the qualification, you may not able to move up. But we are on the top of the hour, and I really want to ask you this question, especially you've been working with Black male, and so we may have to come back at some point to finish this conversation because we haven't got through most of the questions. But I want to ask this question as we're coming to a close of today's session. What is the most impactful way to encourage young Black men to believe in their potential?
I would start with love. I would start with, as Black men leaders, loving first ourselves and practicing high levels of self love, right? And healing. I would start there. And then I would begin with sharing that love with our young people, our young men, and letting them know that we as Black men love them, and not showing up with an ethos and spirit of judgment and what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? And showing up as adult leaders with high levels of love and empathy, and not asking the question of what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And being able to like listen, right? Because our young, it's a two-way street. There is so much for us to learn from our young people, right? They have insights, they have perspective. And so how are we, Richard, creating healing communities, intergenerational healing communities for our young men, where we are actually like amplifying and centering their voices?
Correct.
I would also say, in that loving ethos, that we are approaching our relationships with our young men with the focus on their assets and their beauty, what they have to contribute, and not starting from a place of deficits and problems and what may. I'm not saying ignore that. Um, in communities across this nation, our young men are crying out, hurting, are seeking help and solutions. for a future that they don't see, right? And so it's all about the immediacy, right? And this like, what can I get right now, right? And so there are examples all across this nation of black men creating these spaces, right? And the airwaves are amplifying the violence. The airwaves are amplifying the deficit narratives. How are we as black men building, amplifying the stories of beauty and what our young men are doing? How are we like being models and showing that and creating platforms for them to tell their stories, right? Their aspirations, and understanding that they don't make mistakes. Like they are, we are, because we are human, are going to make mistakes, and it just is a reality that we have a smaller margin for error.
Correct.
And we see this in how black boys and black girls are treated in as early childhood spaces, right? What may perceived as curiosity and innovation in one child is seen as disruption and defiance in children that look like us, right? And so, yeah,
But as you touch on, especially to amplify their potential, let them know that they have potential, is to listen, because that shows that we value them, and in showing that we value them, they feel more comfortable doing the things that they are maybe naturally good at. Because if we're going to judge them, and which you have talked about before, we cannot be judgmental. They have so many oppositions, so if we are not open to listen and to encourage them and to make sure we don't amplify the deficit that we have been hearing about and amplify what we see good about our black males, they may succumb to, those negative narratives. Just to close, as you mentioned, it's important that we listen to them, show them that we value them, because if we're not showing them that we value them and society is not showing them that they value them, they may start to believe the falsifications that have been publicized about who they are as black males. And man, I can't believe we are, you know, already at the hour. It seems as if we've been talking for about 15, 20 minutes.
times always flies when we are together, brother. And
Yes,
I just
sir.
want to the point that you were like putting I think a period on. I think a lot about the balance of affirmation and accountability, right? And how we certainly need to affirm our young men, and at the same time hold them accountable and have high standards, right? And how they are treating themselves, how they are viewing and treating um, girls and women, and balancing and being affirming, but also having conversation and modeling what healthy masculinity uh, looks like, feels like, and that is like critical, brother. That is really critical in the work that we are doing. We're talking about black male impact, and brother Ted Bunch, who is a co-founder of A Call to Men, is someone that I would encourage you to have on uh, your show. And he and his co-founder Tony Porter uh, have done so much vital work around the nation with young men around getting out of the man box and what does healthy masculinity look like, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, man. So, but I will definitely check those brothers out. But brother Sean, man, this has been, a great conversation. It seems to be a short conversation, but we have been here for a little bit over an hour, and I know that you may be moving on to another event for the day. But I want to say, man, I really thank you for the work that you're doing and the work that you have started. Because a lot of us that came after you, have been building on your work. We all have to acknowledge those who have, paved the way, those who have created the foundation. We don't have to always go back to 100 year or years history, but we also have to acknowledge those who are here 10, 20 years ago who have started an initiative and see the importance of the work. So again, man, I just want to thank you for being here and thank you for your commitment to the work itself and the work that we have to do to make a impact within our community. It's on us to increase
Mm,
the
mm.
impact.
Well, I love you, brother, and I boomerang all that you have said to me around my work. It goes without saying, but no, it needs to be said that I would not be having this conversation with you if it were not for a succession and community of men and women that have like poured into me. And I often, you probably have heard me say that there is someone that you don't even know
Correct.
that is rising up in their leadership calling only because they're watching you rise up in yours. So I want to just say to you to like keep pressing and keep blessing and certainly keep resting, right? Self compassion and taking care of yourself because there are people watching you
Correct.
and they're rising up and they were like, God, I want to be like Dr. Richard Cross. I want to do what he's doing, right? And you may not ever meet so many of those leaders, right? So just want to say that I love and appreciate you and how you are leading and the platform that you have built and how you are able to give so many of us an opportunity to be on your platform and share some leadership wisdom, share some stories, share some of our journey that may help somebody else.
Man, thank you. And for those who have been here, I also want to thank you for tuning in today with us. And please continue to support us as we continue on this journey. As I like to say, the Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired. So our goal is to bring individuals that we believe will share perspective and insights that we all can use on our journey as we go forward. Again, thanks for being here. Looking forward to being with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.